What if I told you that 14 people you've never heard of control more of the global food supply than entire governments? The Cargill-MacMillan family has been playing a 150-year game of monopoly with the world's food system. But here's what's insane. While other billionaire families flaunt their wealth, these invisible titans have built a $165 billion empire by controlling every step from farm to fork. They decide grain prices in Chicago, meat supplies in Brazil, and commodity flows that can topple governments. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the family that feeds the world. And what you're about to discover will change how you see every meal you eat for the rest of your life. Right now, as you're sitting there watching this, there's a 90% chance that something you ate today passed through the hands of the Cargill-MacMillan family. That chicken sandwich you had for lunch? They probably processed the grain that fed the chicken. The chocolate in your kitchen? They control the cocoa supply chain. Even the salt on your table? Yep, that's theirs too. But here's the absolutely mind-bending part. Despite feeding 800 million people every single day, not one member of this family has appeared on a magazine cover in the past decade. When Forbes tries to interview them for their billionaire rankings, they get the same response every time. The family prefers to remain private. This isn't just being shy. This is operating the world's largest private company like it's a state secret. The numbers will make your head spin. Cargill generates more revenue than Netflix, Nike, and Coca-Cola combined. We're talking $165 billion annually. That's bigger than the GDP of most countries. The family controls 14% of America's grain exports, 22% of U.S. beef processing, and has operations in 70 countries. Yet somehow, they've managed to stay completely invisible while literally controlling what the world eats. The story begins in 1865 with a 21-year-old farm boy named William Wallace Cargill, and it starts with what might be the greatest business gamble in American history. Picture this. The Civil War has just ended, America is rebuilding, and everyone's rushing west for gold and land. But young William saw something different. He saw grain. While others were digging for gold in California, William was buying grain elevators in Iowa. His friends thought he was crazy. Who gets rich storing wheat? But William understood something that would make his family the most powerful food dynasty on earth. Control the storage, control the supply, control the world. His first grain elevator cost him $3,000, money he borrowed against his father's farm. It was a bet the farm moment. Literally. If it failed, his entire family would lose everything. But William had spotted something others missed. The Transcontinental Railroad was coming, and grain would need to flow from the Midwest to the coasts. Whoever controlled that flow would control American agriculture. By 1870, William owned grain elevators across Minnesota and Iowa. But that was just the beginning. He was about to make a move that would change everything. In 1875, William Cargill did something audacious. He started buying railroads. Not just using them, owning them. While other grain merchants were at the mercy of railroad companies, William was becoming the railroad company. This is where the story gets absolutely wild. William realized that if you control transportation, storage, and processing, you don't just participate in the market, you become the market. By 1885, Cargill owned grain elevators, railroads, lumber mills, and even coal mines. They weren't just a grain company anymore. They were becoming a shadow government of American agriculture. But the real genius move came from William's son-in-law, John MacMillan Sr. In 1895, John married William's daughter Edna and brought something to the family that would change everything: a ruthless understanding of global markets. John looked at the family business and saw something bigger than American grain. He saw world domination. When William Cargill died in 1909, something unexpected happened. Instead of his sons taking over, control passed to his son-in-law, John MacMillan Sr. And John had plans that would have made William's head spin. John's first move was brilliant and brutal. He took the company global. While other American companies were focused on domestic markets, John was opening offices in Argentina, Australia, and Europe. He understood something that wouldn't become obvious to others for decades. Food is the ultimate global commodity. But here's where John showed his true genius. In 1930, during the Great Depression, when everyone else was cutting back, John MacMillan Sr. made the most counterintuitive move in business history. He expanded. While farmers were going bankrupt and grain prices were collapsing, John was buying up grain elevators, processing plants, and transportation networks for pennies on the dollar. When the economy recovered, Cargill didn't just survive the Depression. They emerged as the undisputed king of American agriculture. By 1940, Cargill controlled more grain storage capacity than the next 5 competitors combined. They had become too big to fail before that was even a concept. But the real transformation came under John MacMillan Jr., who took control in 1936. Jr. had a vision that was both brilliant and terrifying. Vertical integration on a scale never seen before. Most companies control one part of the supply chain. Jr. wanted to control every part. From the seeds planted in the ground to the finished products on grocery store shelves, here's how insane their reach became. Cargill started producing the fertilizer that grows the crops, storing the grain in their elevators, transporting it on their ships, processing it in their mills, and selling the finished products through their distribution networks. They weren't just participating in the food system, they were becoming the food system. By the 1960s, something unprecedented had happened. Cargill had become so integrated into global food production that governments started treating them like a nation-state. When the Soviet Union needed grain during famines, they didn't negotiate with American farmers, they negotiated directly with Cargill. Today, the Cargill-MacMillan empire is controlled by 14 family members, and their combined wealth is absolutely staggering. Each family member is worth between $4 and $6 billion. That's more than most tech billionaires, and you've probably never heard a single one of their names. Let me introduce you to the invisible rulers of the world's food supply. Pauline MacMillan Kyneth, worth $6 billion, controls the family's charitable foundation and has never given a public interview. Marion MacMillan Pictet, worth $5.8 billion, lives in Switzerland and is so private that even business journalists can't find recent photos of her. Cargill-MacMillan Jr., worth $5.5 billion, the family's unofficial spokesman, which means he gives about 1 interview per decade. These aren't just rich people, they're the puppet masters of global nutrition. Here's where the story gets absolutely mind-blowing. While other billionaire families buy sports teams and build rockets, the Cargill-MacMillans have built something far more powerful. A shadow government that controls what the world eats. They don't need to lobby politicians because they are the infrastructure. When governments want to feed their people, they have to go through Cargill. When there's a famine, Cargill decides how much grain gets shipped where. When commodity prices spike, it's often because Cargill decided to hold back supply. In 2008, during the global food crisis, grain prices doubled almost overnight. Millions of people couldn't afford basic food. Riots broke out in 30 countries. And at the center of it all was Cargill, controlling the flow of grain that could have prevented the crisis. The family's response to criticism? Complete silence. They don't explain their decisions to anyone, not governments, not journalists, not even their own shareholders, because they don't have any public shareholders. But here's what makes the current generation truly terrifying. They're not just maintaining their empire, they're expanding it in ways that would make their ancestors proud and the rest of us nervous. David McLennan, the current CEO, though not a family member, has been quietly transforming Cargill into something even more powerful. They're not just controlling traditional agriculture anymore. They're positioning themselves to control the future of food. Cargill is now the world's largest producer of plant-based proteins. They're investing billions in lab-grown meat. They're buying up vertical farms and developing genetically modified crops. While everyone's debating the future of food, Cargill is already controlling it. They've also expanded into financial services, becoming one of the world's largest commodity trading firms. They don't just move grain, they move the money that buys the grain. They're essentially the central bank of global agriculture. But this obsession with secrecy comes with a dark side that most people never see. In 2019, Cargill was linked to deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. Their response? They issued a brief statement and then went silent. When workers at their meat processing plants faced dangerous conditions during COVID-19, with hundreds getting sick and some dying, Cargill's response was minimal. They made small changes and moved on, protected by their private status from the kind of public scrutiny that would destroy a public company. Former employees describe a culture of extreme secrecy where even basic business information is treated like classified intelligence. Some say it's like working for the CIA of agriculture. The family has also been criticized for their role in global inequality. While they've amassed one of the largest fortunes in human history by controlling food, millions of people around the world still go hungry. Critics argue that their control over food distribution prioritizes profit over human need. Here's the most shocking revelation of all. The Cargill-MacMillan family doesn't just control what we eat. They're positioning themselves to control what future generations will be able to eat. Through their investments in genetic modification, vertical farming, and alternative proteins, they're not just adapting to the future of food, they're creating it. While governments debate food policy, Cargill is already implementing the solutions. They're buying up farmland in Africa, controlling water rights in drought-stricken regions, and investing in technologies that could make traditional farming obsolete. They're not just preparing for climate change, they're positioning themselves to profit from it. Cargill-MacMillan Jr. once said in a rare interview, "We don't follow food trends, we create them." That wasn't a business strategy. That was a declaration of intent to control human nutrition for generations to come. But here's the most mind-bending part of this entire story. While the world debates who has the most power, politicians, tech billionaires, oil companies, the real power has been quietly accumulated by a family that most people have never heard of. The Cargill-MacMillans have achieved something that every other powerful family can only dream of. They've become essential. Governments can regulate tech companies, voters can change politicians, but everyone needs to eat. And when everyone needs to eat, everyone needs Cargill. They've spent 150 years building the perfect monopoly, one that's so integrated into the global food system that it's become invisible. They don't need to fight for power because they've become the infrastructure that power depends on. Every time you eat a meal, every time you feed your pets, every time you buy groceries, you're participating in their system. And the most brilliant part? You probably never even thought about who was controlling it all until right now. The Cargill-MacMillan family has built the ultimate empire, one that's invisible, essential, and absolutely unstoppable. They don't just feed the world, they own the system that makes feeding the world possible. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.